What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by just one of my fellow nerds this week. It is the resident old man, Clark Barnes. Clark, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete. It is playoff time. It is exciting. We're going to do some start sits, but I think we're going to talk about something much juicier than that.
Ooh.
Stay tuned.
Ooh, Clarky boy. Clarky giving us the hard sell, and I love it. Yes, we are going to talk all kinds of good fantasy stuff as we head into the fantasy playoffs. Clark, I know I am in playoffs for both of the leagues that I am in and care about. What about you? How did you do this year?
I had disastrous real life fantasy teams this year.
Oh, no.
I was way overweight on Russell Wilson, J.K. Dobbins, bet on the Rams again. And so did not do well in my live leagues. FFPC, one of my favorite dynasty league formats. I'm in the playoffs in about half of the leagues. And in the other half, I had already made some moves to try to get some draft capital and not rebuild, but reload for next year. So I think things worked out relatively good, but it always stings the most. The home league is the league you care the most about, and it just totally did not go well.
Oh, devastating.
But that's all right. Didn't get last.
Get last.
So we're okay. And how about yourself? How did fantasy go for you so far this year?
Fantasy went well. I cannot complain. Like I said, I'm in the playoffs in both of my leagues, or the leagues that I care about. Top of the home league, which is great. Even though I'm going in with a loss, but that's okay. I'm still feeling good. And then in my dynasty league, I tried to tank at the end of the season. But then I rattled off 3 straight wins and I'm now in the playoffs. So, hey, crazier things have happened.
It's always good. And that's why, even if you're looking to reload in dynasty, you still want to make good dynasty trades. Don't sell assets for pennies on the dollar. It's better just to let that person retire on your team than to make a bad trade for, like the 108 or the 110, which could be, I don't know, could be great. Could be Justin Jefferson or Jalen Waddle, or it could be, I don't know, someone we've already forgotten about.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's get into the show. Because I know people love to hear about our fantasy teams, but let's now talk about your fantasy teams, dear listeners. Normally we start with the nerdgasm. Clark, do you have anything that you'd like to gasm about? Or
I do. Guys, we love coming back from injury. J.K. Dobbins came back, and I'm tempted to say he looked great, but he really just looked okay, and he had a really good box score. He busted off a big run where, we all speculate it looked like he was still struggling to really turn on the speed, but great news for next year. Really excited to see a guy come back from a really devastating injury, and he might have, pushed himself to come back a little soon, which is, that's why these dudes are in the NFL, is because they pushed themselves so hard. Yeah. And so I don't hold that against him, but it was just cool to see him get back out there, look good going into the, playoffs. I mean, the Ravens are probably going to the playoffs, and just love to see guys come back, even healthy, and just even somewhat healthy, and just get back on the field.
Yeah, for sure. We love to see it. And to your point about J.K. Dobbins, still looking like maybe he had a little bit of a limp or just a little bit of pain there in that knee, still coming and recovering from that. If you're looking for waiver moves to still make as you head into the fantasy playoffs, Gus Edwards, Gus the Bus, always out there, 44% rostered in sleeper leagues. And even with J.K. Dobbins having a really good game and filling the stat sheet and being the primary back in Baltimore last week against the Steelers, Gus the Bus, 13 rush attempts, 66 yards, 34% of the snaps. Like, he has a role there where he can give you RB, flex, maybe some RB2 weeks if he gets a touchdown in there, but probably is a pretty consistent flex play heading down into the fantasy playoffs. And if anything happens to J.K. Dobbins, if that knee gets re-aggravated or what have you, suddenly Gus the Bus sitting at prime spot. So if you have a roster spot that you can kind of, store Gus if you don't necessarily need him right now, or if you just want a kind of guy who I think consistently will get you flex RB4 flex role moving forward. They've got the Browns this week, Falcons next week. both of those are defenses you can run on. I like that. I like that as a play. But yes, we'd love to see J.K. Dobbins back healthy and making plays.
Yeah, and Gus Edwards back healthy.
Also true.
Making plays. And I think, you make a really good point of the Ravens run a lot, and they're going to probably need to run with their running backs even more with Lamar missing time. Huntley, very serviceable backup. I don't think it's going to kill the offense to have him in there if he's able to go. He's questionable.
That's awesome.
But the Ravens want to use both of those guys, and so even if they're both, I'm using air quotes here for the podcast listeners, healthy. Yeah, you could do a lot worse than Gus Edwards putting up 60 yards and you're just crossing your fingers for a touchdown.
Yeah. He finished the RB30 last week, going 66 yards and 13 rushes and no touchdowns in Pittsburgh.
That schedule spicy. Was looking forward to that as a heavily invested in the Ravens guy. And, it didn't turn out quite how we want, but we'll see.
I would love to see just one season, football gods, in which the Ravens don't suffer any injuries. Like just one season where we can it feels like they are like that team. The Chargers are that team of the AFC West. I feel like the Ravens are that team of the AFC North, where they're just like constantly, everyone on that team of importance has some period of time where they're banged up, and most of them are on IR right now, which is devastating.
Talking dynasty, one of my targets this offseason is going to be Lamar. On paper didn't have the greatest season, and the Ravens are trying to get talent around him. They're not going like all in and making a huge trade, but they took a wide receiver in the first round. They took a tight end in name only in Isaiah Likely.
Yeah.
And they've had some tough injuries. So, hopefully they can put it together. But Lamar Jackson, it's just, maybe a buy window this offseason.
And can I make a recommendation to you, Clark, and dear listeners who want to follow in Clark's footsteps and make a trade for Lamar? I'm here for it. Love it. Support it. I would do it soon in the offseason. I would do it early, because there's a chance, it's a very small chance, but there's a chance that Lamar isn't in Baltimore next season. And if he's on a team that has already an offense filled with weapons that he's stepping his way into, you're never going to be able to pry Lamar away. And so maybe I would do it. If you're going to do it, I would do it early. Do it early in the offseason when the taste of I don't know, struggle is still fresh in the mouth of a Lamar manager, and don't wait until he gets traded. That being said, we all did that for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson went to Broncos and everyone shat themselves thinking that this was going to be the most greatest offense in the history of the NFL. And it was not.
Yeah, but I'm going to keep taking those shots. Right. Quarterbacks are valuable.
100%.
And that one didn't work out. And, even you'd say Stafford didn't work out this year, but I'm going to keep taking those.
Yeah, but Stafford worked out last year. Stafford led Cooper Kupp to the most ridiculous fantasy season we've ever seen from a wide receiver. So, it feels very rare in which a quarterback changing teams busts as hard as Russell Wilson has. And to your point, I know you've said this, but I think I would still buy the Broncos offense next year because it's going to come at a discount price. And there's just no way that it can be this bad in 2 years in a row.
They'll have a new coach. They'll be getting Tim Patrick back. They'll be getting, I've said this 4 weeks in a row. Their left tackle who got hurt should be back.
Garrett Boyles.
Yeah, it's something like that. But those are injuries that are really easy to overlook. But the Dolphins did not look sharp with their tackles missing, and those are just, it's not the star running back that we talk about being out in fantasy, but offensive line matters so much. And they'll have a new coach in Denver. That doesn't mean better coach, but
it's new.
Probably better.
Probably not calling field goals on 4th and 2 with the game on the line.
Yeah, but if we recall, Bill Belichick's first stint as a coach didn't look so peachy either. So hope springs eternal as we look to next year.
I know Jordan's not with us right now, but he is with us in spirit as we talk about the importance of offensive line play. He's smiling down. That sounded like he died. He is not dead.
George just couldn't make it. He's alive.
He's taking a week off.
Yeah.
He's yes, there you go. All right, let's talk must starts for week 15. God, it's week 15 already, Clark. This boggles my mind that we're already at the second or final quarter of the season. But week 15 must starts. Clark, start us off. Who is a player who you are all in on this week for starting?
Yeah, you nailed it. The season's too long. Like, I'm glad that there's more football, but like it's too much.
I'm down
anyway,
NFL.
Again, not necessarily a must start, but kind of like if you're struggling, I feel like
Love
this
it.
is a great target. Matt Ryan is out there on lots of waiver wires. They've got a great matchup this week against the Vikings. The Vikings defense is not very good, but their offense is pretty good, so teams have to score against them. And I think that this is the type of matchup that this struggling but not a dumpster fire Colts team can really take advantage of. So I like Matt Ryan this week. I'm feeling better about Michael Pittman this week. This is a solid matchup of guys that have been very disappointing that might give you a little pop in that first round of your playoffs if you really need it. I mean, if you cannot start Pittman, awesome on you.
Good for you.
But you'll feel a lot better about it this week against the Vikings, who just, they really, their record's good, but it's been an odd season for them.
Yeah, that's a great call, especially for Pittman. I think if you've got Pittman, you play him. And Matt Ryan, it would be a ballsy maneuver to do if you were in a 1 QB league. If you're super flex, I think he's a very viable streaming target. We've seen him do elite QB1 outings so far this season. He's only had 2 of them, but he did, he put up a QB5 performance against the Raiders in week 10. And then he had that big blow up game against the Jaguars back in week 6, where he threw for 3 touchdowns and almost 400 yards. So like, if the pieces fall right, he can still put it together and still do it. And he's got a lot of weapons around him. Paris Campbell is healthy. You've got, Jonathan Taylor is now like kind of becoming the Jonathan Taylor that people drafted him to be. So yeah, I like that call as someone, if you're kind of like banged up at quarterback, or if you kind of have a lot of questions surrounding it. Like right now for me, I have Trevor Lawrence, who I added off waivers, and then I have Justin Fields, but Justin Fields hasn't practiced, is banged up, and he's going up against the Eagles defense that has been one of the best against quarterbacks so far this season. And with fantasy playoffs on the line, sometimes you got to risk it for the biscuit, Clark, and starting Matt Ryan would be a risk it.
And do you think that the Bears will keep it close enough for Fields to even bother with his magic?
Sure.
Because he's not Kirk Cousins putting up 425 yards against the Lions, like that's kind of expected. Like Kirk Cousins is okay, and he got in a boat race, and so he had to throw for a bunch of yards. But like, I feel it's unlikely that a coming off injury,
right? If
Justin
the
Fields
Eagles
is going to rush for 250 yards,
right? If the Eagles just drop like 17 points on the Bears in the first quarter, that might just be it. And then they're just kind of like, playing to survive, especially since the Bears are not necessarily a team that's going to throw the ball around the yard to get back into a game. I like it. It's ballsy. One of my must starts for this week is a guy whom is on my rosters, and I am putting this out into the ether, both to benefit those who have him on your team, but also to benefit me. We're hoping that, good vibes make good results. But Greg Dulcich for the Denver Broncos, speaking of the terrible Broncos offense, but we saw some glimmer of hope last week. Russell Wilson throwing for 3 touchdowns, all of them to Jerry Jeudy. But, we don't get picky when performances play out. But the Denver Broncos are taking on the Cardinals, and Greg Dulcich, since week 6, which was his first game of the season coming back from injury, he leads the Broncos in targets, receptions, yards, and routes run. So he has been Russell Wilson's go-to guy. He has been the number 1 weapon in Denver. And even though Jerry Jeudy just dropped 3 touchdowns, still Dulcich has had back-to-back games with 8 targets. And unsurprisingly, he ranks top 10 in our neck ratings for tight ends, which means he's been consistent, efficient. He's getting you kind of around that 10 points per game that he's been averaging. And he is in a matchup that you just, as a fantasy manager with Greg Dulcich, you salivate over. The Cardinals have been the worst defense against tight ends. They're giving up per game 6.8 catches, 79.2 yards, and 0.7 touchdowns per game to tight ends. That's almost 80 yards, 7 catches, and a touchdown per game to opposing tight ends. So Dulcich being that kind of linchpin of the Broncos offense since he's returned, I fully expect him to put together I would say like a pretty solid tight end 1, maybe even a high end, like top 3 tight end performance this week.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, anybody who's not starting Travis Kelce has some question marks at tight end. And you laid out a great case. I think Dulcich is going to be one of those gigantic, heart-throbbing points of contention all offseason for dynasty owners. Like,
Yes.
what young tight ends are we excited about? I mean, we're hoping for Pitts, but Dulcich is showing us something. So that'll be fun to talk about in the offseason.
Yeah, I feel like Dulcich and Chikakonkwo, who Nick's been on for a while now. I think those are the two young tight ends who I feel like have shown us the most in recent weeks to get us excited for dynasty. Do you have another start for us, Clark?
I've got a flyer on Chris Moore. The Texans.
Yep.
Chris Moore, who plays wide receiver for the Houston Texans, probably not a ton of people aware of that. With everybody out last week, put up a good game, and he's done this before where when he gets targeted heavily, he does put up nice X wide receiver numbers. Again, this isn't a must start, but if you're railing from injury, this guy's on a lot of waiver wires. He'll probably be a pretty high priority waiver wire pickup this week because of the performance that he had. But I mean, you could do a lot worse. Well, actually, I'm going to say you could do worse than the Texans passing offense, but that's not true. I'm taking a shot on him in a couple of leagues, and it's that time of the year where these guys come out of nowhere and they can win you the championship, or you can angrily tweet me at Clark Barnes and say, why do you call yourself a fantasy analyst?
Hey, Chris Moore is on my dynasty team that has won 3 in a row after I tried to tank, and currently in the playoffs. So he's given me some good games. I actually, both Chris Moore, I like Chris Moore, and I also Nico Collins, if he's healthy and playing, he's also widely available, 39% rostered in sleeper leagues. I know he's dealing with some injury, and that's something to obviously monitor, but if he's in, I think he ranks like top 5 in neck rating amongst wide receivers, which means he's been one of the most consistent and efficient fantasy receivers. And while that's not, he's not producing an extremely high level simply because it's the Texans offense. It means that he's basically going to get you solid flex play regardless of the matchup. And in a matchup against the Chiefs, where if you're going to stay in this game, you're going to have to throw the ball. Collins has seen, 10 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets, 10 targets in the last 4 weeks. And Chris Moore, I like too, coming off of that 11 target game, 10 catches, being the go-to guy for the Texans. This Texans passing game, you said it. I know it's not the worst in the league. And am I crazy in thinking that this feels like a game that could, through the first half, maybe being like mildly competitive in the sense that the Texans are like within 10 points of the Chiefs because they can kind of also get it going, and then the Chiefs pull away in the second half. But I mean, there was a close game against the freaking Cowboys.
I think the line for the Cowboys game was 17.5, and I didn't get anywhere to make the bet. And I thought, man, 17.5 for the Texas on Texas matchup.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's too much. I think the last time I looked at the line for the Chiefs games, it's Chiefs minus 14. I don't think the Texans are going to be close. Okay. I think that was it. That was the high water mark.
They did it. They that was their Super Bowl, and they won. Well, there you go.
But still, plenty of opportunity chucking it deep in garbage time, which should be just about any time after 8 minutes in the first quarter. These wide receivers bear consideration.
Well, my second must start is from this game as well. It's on the other side of the ball. Isaiah Pacheco, going against this Texans run defense since week 10, he's had a 61% opportunity share in the Chiefs backfield. He's been the predominant lead back there, which this would put him in a top 15 among running backs this year in opportunity share. He's had double-digit attempts in every game during that time. His fewest was last week with 13. So he's always had at least 13 attempts in those last, week 15, last 5 games. And the Texas run defense ranks bottom of the league in most fantasy points, attempts, yards, and touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs this season. And I think part of that is maybe their defense is, part of that is their defense is bad, but also part of that is like what Clark said, teams put up points early and then just run the ball to end the game. Nick has him ranked on NerdBall as his RB9 this week, and I think he's a locked-in RB1 for me. So if you've got him, obviously you're firing up and you're starting him, and I'm fully expecting him to put out a real big performance against a juicy matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Chiefs should get up early. I mean, we could see a lot of Chad Henne in this game, but I don't think that they'll take Pacheco out. I think that they'll let him continue to develop as a rookie, and so this is a nice start.
Yeah. I need to work somehow. For some reason, I add an N into his name. It's Pacheco, and I add Panchenko. I don't know why. So I need to improve, make sure I like drop that N. Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know why I want to add that N in there. Isaiah Pacheco.
You just think he's Baltic, It's just like sure.
I will say
October on the mind.
It is weird when you watch highlights of him doing anything and you see another like him in wearing number 10 for the Chiefs. You're like, oh, that's not Tyreek Hill. It's weird, but I support it. Let's take iconic numbers from players who aren't on the team anymore. I don't know. Feels like a weird hill to die on.
Indeed.
All right. Well, so there's a must starts for this week, and also make sure to check out, I'm going to be dropping tomorrow my volatility index, talking about players who you should be starting this week, but also whether or not they're some risky and safe starts for week 15, because this is when it all matters. This is the time that the games matter for playoffs. If you're not in the playoffs, hey, do whatever you want. Before we talk about top 5, Clark, since we're talking about the playoffs, I quickly wanted to ask you this question, because I know every year this is a hot button topic in the fantasy community, and I want to hear what your take is. If you are not in the fantasy playoffs, should you make waiver claims?
I think that depends on, is there something to be played for in the consolation bracket? So some leagues do, some dynasty leagues do picks based on how you finish in the consolation bracket. And in that case, if there's still something for you to play for, even if it's just like $50 or something, then yeah, the league is designed for you to continue to be engaged. If there is nothing to play for other than pride, I do not make moves. I don't think that it's bad, but I let the teams that are in it compete, and I don't mess with it.
Okay, there you go. If you want to play in that kind of league, hit up Clark. Clark is a truly honorable man. I do not do that. If I'm out of the playoffs, which I rarely am, I cut everyone down as much as I can. All right, let's go.
Hey man, it's that's why I say I don't do it.
I know.
There's no like
you're such a good
taste
person
in my
Clark.
mouth. I mean, if you play in a league where that should not be allowed, you need to make it not allowed. I'll never.
There you go.
Other people
it's never the weird baseball rules of the game or whatever the shit that baseball does. It's got to be written in stone. If it's not written in stone, you can do it.
That's right.
Amen. Okay. To wrap us up, we're going to talk top 5, and it is top 5 teams with the easiest schedule for the fantasy playoffs. And this is using on our site. This is Patty Cooper has his NEF ratings, and he does a strength of schedule built off of those NEF rankings. And you can go check them out on the site. And we have what I've done. He has his ranked from a pass defense and then also a run defense ranks. And I have just simply added them up. We've gotten that total. So teams that have, the easiest matchups overall. Top 5, here we go. Number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is out of 32 being the easiest, have the 24th easiest pass schedule and the 23rd easiest run schedule, giving them, if I do quick math in my head, the 47 points, Clark. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the 5th easiest schedule from here on out in fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's been one of those teams that can really sink your season. Like, at least the Broncos are known to be terrible, so it's easy to get away from them.
Yeah.
And it's easy to not start them. But the Broncos are doing just enough to keep you engaged. I mean, Godwin's getting targeted all the time. Mike Evans is constantly getting the old AJ Green treatment when he was in Cincinnati.
Yes.
We just look up and no one's around AJ Green and he gets a long touchdown but they've all been called back, right? Yep. And there's some tumult between the receivers and Tom Brady and all this stuff, but yada yada yada, they are still first in their division. So not only
NFC South is a shit show.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just got to get into the tournament. It's like all those people that sneaked in at the 6th spot.
Exactly.
Like,
got in.
But they're still playing. They're still playing hard. They're going to do everything they can, and Tom Brady's pretty good, and you're betting on Tom Brady. And so I know you've been hurt. with your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I keep firing them up, and that's awesome to hear they have good schedule.
I like that, Clark. I like that. I like that certainty and encouragement, especially from a Rachaad White. Rachaad White is like the guy on my bench who I'm like, oh my God, he's the most viable candidate to be dropped for a waiver ad. And I just stare at him every week and I'm like, I can't do it. And yes, because now I learned that they have a good schedule. He's going nowhere. Number 4, the San Francisco 49ers, ranked 28th in pass defense schedule moving forward and 22nd in run defense schedule moving forward. It pains me. I mean, Brock Purdy looked great in his debut game. Is that going to continue? I don't know. It pains me that Jimmy G is injured because I think and Debo just got injured. But as someone with Christian McCaffrey in one league and George Kittle in another league, I love to hear this.
Yeah, I would say that Purdy looked okay.
Historic stats he put up, Clark.
Couple of teams with not the best defenses. I was super surprised that they were able to get on top of the Buccaneers so quickly. But he has played serviceably, and he is in the conversation with a guy we talked about earlier, like Matt Ryan, of like, if you are really hard up at QB and you just got to take a shot at someone, San Francisco is still going to move the ball. It sucks that Debo's out, but Brandon Ayuk is really good. They have plenty of firepower with Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey. Certainly 2 QB leagues. I've had a rough time of it, and I'm thinking about getting Purdy in there. And the fourth game is about when defenses seem to figure out quarterbacks like this, like kind of Gardner Minshew, who we get excited about, and then they kind of fade a little bit. Well, Purdy's going to have a chance to prove himself because he's going to see that 5th, 6th, 7th game probably with San Francisco going into the playoffs, and easier schedules matter. It's one of the reasons we were on the 49ers early this year, is because they were going to have an easy schedule, and lo and behold, 15 weeks later, it actually turned out that way.
Yep. To your point about takes about 4 weeks for defenses to kind of, figure out, get enough tape on the quarterback to game plan effectively. It might suck for 49ers fans because that's going to happen right around the actual NFL playoffs. For fantasy owners, your season's done by then. Defenses don't know what they're going to do with Brock Purdy for the next 4 weeks, baby. Yeah. Brocktober is going to come all the way through. I know we're in December. Brockcember is going to lead your league and win you the playoffs, baby. That's what y'all like to hear. I know I might have to get myself some Brockcember on my team.
Yeah, and Ayuk, he is going to have to step up, and is perfectly capable of doing it. I mean, he's proven that he can. Extremely talented. It's just when you have Deebo Samuel and a coach that likes to run those types of plays, Ayuk's kind of seems odd, but like field stretcher running guys off the play guy. Well, he's going to have to step up now. They need him. They're not good enough to. I don't think that they're good enough to really dominate without him. So
agreed. Number 3. The Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers have the 3rd easiest fantasy schedule, and that all comes down to the fact that they have the 32nd ranked pass defense schedule, which means they have the easiest pass defense, 20th ranked run defense, but their pass defense is a cakewalk according to Patty's Neff rankings, which, Clark, I think my biggest regret this fantasy season is thinking Christian Watson was going to be just a flash in the pan and not spending all my fab getting him on waivers. I was like, Christian Watson's not good. This isn't sustainable. Well, it is. Christian Watson, I think, is going to just completely feast throughout the fantasy playoffs. And I know we look back last year, everyone loves to point out, okay, this happened last year. Who's going to do it this year? Well, last year was Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Who came on during the fantasy playoffs and just absolutely single-handedly won games for people. Christian Watson seems like he's gearing up to do that exact same thing, where he's going to come on late and have an easy schedule. Aaron Rodgers has Aaron Rodgers' trust, and they're just going to throw to him constantly. And it's going to be, if you got a Christian Watson, you're patting yourself on the back right now.
Yeah, this one hurts me personally. In my single QB dynasty leagues, I like to run lean. I just have one quarterback, and it's really hard to get me to move off of it. And those are the those are the teams that I'm not going to the playoffs with because I had a little bit more Aaron Rodgers than I should have.
Oh no.
I at this point, you gotta play him. What's so scary is that the Bears suck on pass defense also, and Rodgers was unable to put up 200 yards. But I'm firing him up. Schedule matters so much. Who you're playing matters so much. Dang it. This one just hurts me personally.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a quick gander at who they are. So they have the Rams this week, whose defense has been less than sublime. Then they play the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Detroit Lions to end the season. My God.
Yeah, and with the Rams, you're just hoping that Donald stays out. If you're a Green Bay Packers fan or whatever, you're hoping Donald stays out. I don't ever want a player to be injured or miss time, whatever. But if that's your opponent and this is for all the marbles, you just want Donald to stay out and get healthy.
But the stretch of Dolphins, Vikings, Lions is very nice. So well done, Packers fans, and well done anyone who has Packers in their fantasy team. Number 2, the Indianapolis Colts. We talked about them earlier in the show. They have the face the 21st pass defense schedule and the 31st run defense schedule. So if you've been holding on to Jonathan Taylor this entire season, it seems like he's set to, you are going to reap the rewards of holding on to him and having patience as they face the second easiest run defense schedule for the rest of the season.
Yeah, oddly enough, a team known for tanking as a way of life could actually win out the schedule under a coach.
How bad is the AFC South right now? We gave shit to the NFC South. How bad is the AFC South?
I got 2 Texans tickets for New Year's Day because I thought I'd be down in Texas, and I'm not. I cannot find anyone to take them. My sister's like, "Oh, thanks. I'm on like." No one listens. Or my friends don't listen to this. I don't think. It's like I'm down to like my 6th friend of being like, "Would you like free tickets?" It's like the 13th row on like the 30-yard line. These are good seats, and I just cannot give them away.
Oh,
that's why they were so cheap.
That's why they're so cheap. The Titans are good. There's no way the Colts are going to somehow come back into this game. What are they down? Yeah, they're not coming back into the. But anyways, but nice easy schedule. Jonathan Taylor probably going to put up some good numbers moving forward. The number 1, this is saucy. I'll tell you this, Clark. The number 1 team with the easiest schedule for the fantasy playoffs, the New York Jets. I just hope Mike White isn't super banged up. That being said, Joe Flacco, show me something. 30th ranked pass defense schedule, 28th ranked run defensive schedule. So your Garrett Wilson stock, Elijah Moore has had now 3 games, or he's had 2 games in the last 3 that have been good, 60 plus yards. He was their leading target getter last week. There's some pieces here that could be some to add some fantasy excitement going into your playoffs.
Yeah, I think to describe the Jets as scrappy is appropriate, especially from a fantasy standpoint. They've got some guys we did not expect putting up some pretty decent numbers. I see why you reacted the way you did before you read it out, because man, I've been playing Wilson and just holding my nose and doing it, and it's finally turned out okay. But like, is the front office gonna make Zach Wilson go back in there? Mike White, does he have like? I'm not speculating. I don't know, but like, does he have broken ribs or something? I mean, he got walloped out there. I mean, if you're a Jets player, owner, GM, you're hoping Joe Flacco goes in there, which like, what an odd sentence.
9 hours ago, Rotoballer updated recent news. The Jets are expecting Mike White to play this week, which is ridiculous. We talked about J.K. Dobbins coming back from injury because that's just how they're designed. But let me read you the Jets' remaining 4 games, Clark. They play the Detroit Lions, Jacksonville Jaguars, Seattle Seahawks, Miami Dolphins. God, that's a gorgeous lineup.
2.5, 3 wins.
Yeah, I don't even care about that. I mean, Mike White is going to be averaging 300 yards a game, and it's going to be delicious for everyone involved. So, yeah. I have Elijah Moore. I'm ready for him to break out.
That one's tough, man.
That one is
he's
tough.
So good.
I mean,
the temptation for me is always to say, always bet on talent, but some things can just not be overcome.
Yeah. Before we go, let me quickly rattle off the bottom 5, the teams with the 5 hardest rest of the season schedules. Number 5, Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 4, Arizona Cardinals.
Ugh.
Number 3, Seattle Seahawks. Number 2 is really tied. The top 2 are tied. So it's 1 and 2, or just the 2 is a 1. There we go. Tied for number 1, hardest schedule. Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins.
Yes. Man, the Dolphins giveth and the Dolphins taketh away. I was riding high on overexposure to many a Dolphin early in this season. And I should have liked the tweet so that I could give it credit. But this is something a lot of people are saying is I think we've gotten to the point where some defensive coordinators have figured out what it is the Dolphins are doing to everyone. And so now they have to adjust. My faith is in Mike McDaniel, and he's going to be able to adjust. But that is a tough thing to get over. Tyreek Hill is fighting a leg injury. Last week, is he going to be back? Waddle, I mean, again, we're here to speculate at this point. Waddle must have been hurt, right? Like, where did he go? He's still good.
He completely disappeared.
Yeah, and it's not like he forgot how to play, right? No. So, man, that is horrible news, Pete. Horrible news that the Dolphins have a tough schedule.
It's because they played the entire AFC East and the Packers. They played the Bills, Packers, Patriots, Jets. And
that Bills game is going to be interesting.
That Bills game is going to be good.
Before we go, do not forget, there are 3 games on Saturday.
Ooh, Clark Barnes dropping knowledge.
Get in there and make sure that you have set at least a tentative lineup. 3 games on Saturday. Yes. Heads up. And you don't want to make it this far and then forget that, I still had Cortland Sutton on the bench and he's playing or whatever. Just check your lineups.
Those games: Colts at Vikings, Ravens at Browns, Dolphins at Bills. Dolphins Bills Saturday night. That's gonna be a good game.
That's gonna be a crackerjack.
That's gonna be a good game. That's gonna be a good game.
Just before I got on here, saw Barstool Sports tweeted out Mike McDaniel wearing a "I wish it was colder" shirt. I like that guy.
We're gonna spend most of the offseason talking about Clark's growing affinity for Mike McDaniel.
I don't want to ruin it. I don't want this to become the everybody licking McVay's boots over and over, or the Tom Brady's been ruined by everybody just talking about how great he is, which makes people not like him. And they're doing it to Patrick Mahomes now. It's really irritating when a quarterback who's 3 years older than Mahomes and has been doing it longer, they're like, "Oh, that's like a Mahomes play," and you're like, I hate you. Who are these people that call these games? Anyway, I don't have feelings about it.
Mike McDaniel, untouchable, A+ human, perfect hire for the Miami Dolphins.
I feel better now that I got that off my chest.
There you go. That's what we're here for. What is the point of having a podcast, Clark, if you can't get things off your chest? That is what we are here for. And that is all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark. And make sure you check out our Patreon. Become a Patreon supporter. You can support us, but also you get a lot of perks. You get access to Skylar Carlin's DFS pieces, and he drops a Thursday night showdown piece where you can pick captains and all kinds of good stuff to help you win some cash-ola. And of course, make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out on the site at nerdballff.com. Until next week, my fellow nerds.